Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is a one-man art and clothing brand that started off as a fun side project that has grown into a worldwide brand. Please welcome the designer and artist behind Seventh.Ink, Matthew Johnson. What's going on, Matthew?
Hey, how's it going? How you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Thanks for hanging out with me during my lunch break. What's your usual go-to lunch or sandwich?
Oh, my lunch, my sandwich. Okay, I thought about this. So, this one takes time though. You got to have time to make it because like you can't just throw it together. But it's you basically just got to heat it up. So the classic grilled cheese. But what I do is I take 2 slices of bread. Honestly, it doesn't really matter what kind. Anything out of the loaf, standard loaf. This is not an insane sandwich, by the way, but this is one of my favorites. Piece of cheese on each side, butter on the outsides, and then you put 7 or so slices of meat. You got your tomato in there, and then you got your pickle slices, and they have to be Clausen pickles. They have to be the sliced flat Clausen sandwich pickles. You put those in there, and then you do some pepper. I was gonna say salt, but I'm on a salt diet, right? So, and then you put it all together, and you grill that on the griddle, and it's and you press it too. Try to press it, and that's insane. It's just gooey, hot, delicious. A little bit of crunch in there too. So
I like that. My question, so it's funny because I just had a conversation with someone about like what's the definition of a grilled cheese. When's it become a grilled cheese and when's it become like a melt? But that's a long topic that we can discuss. But it does sound delicious. Is there usually a preference of meat, and then is there a preference of meat, and then do you warm the meat on the griddle and then put it onto the sandwich? Or how does that process work on the assembly part? Are you like assembling it on the griddle? Is it assembled already and then you're putting it onto the griddle? Those are the questions I want to know.
those are some good questions. Okay, so I agree with you. It's not a grilled cheese sandwich. I was trying to jump ahead and give a quick description before I got to it. You're right.
No, that's fine.
So definitely on the same page there. It would be cool to start cooking that ham on the side, and so it gets all crispy and browned up a little bit. But I never do that. I actually just put the whole thing together on the side, and then I flip it on the griddle. So
no, and both of them work because I usually do assemble that way as well. Like I assemble everything. I butter both. I try to butter like the bottom bread and then and then assemble and then put it on top. I sometimes use mayo. I've seen some people do a mix of mayo and butter for that toastiness.
Yes.
And then sometimes I'll even put like a little dome. I'll put a lid under, like a lid on top of it, so it kind of creates that little dome. So it kind of provides a little bit, so it steams up and heats up stuff. But usually when I make like a breakfast sandwich or something like that, like I'll sometimes do like a egg in a bagel sandwich. So I'll do so I use the whole of the bagel and I make it a little bit bigger and I crack an egg into it. But I make sure that I do it so that the egg, so that it's I'm crazy, but I'm like, I'll do it where I like try to look at it. So like where the egg is. So therefore when I flip it upside down over, the egg is not on the outside of the bagel, but the inside of the bagel. So I slice a bagel and I put the hole a little bigger, crack the eggs on top of it. And while that's cooking in the egg in the hole type thing in the bagel, I then put like the ham or the circle ham or bacon around so that it's cooking with everything's all cooking on the pan, and then I can assemble and do that. But that's like crazy breakfast style, not like your lunch style.
Yeah, no, that's wild. That's like a Saturday morning thing, right? That's when you got
time. That is exactly what it is. It's a weekend. I should actually make it. It's been a while since I've made it, but it's like I came up with it one day and I was like, man, there's already a hole in the bagel. Let's make it a little bit bigger and put an egg on it, and then it's like the perfect breakfast sandwich. So definitely, if you try it, let me know.
That is such a good idea. Yeah, I love that.
So tell people what led you to want to start this in 2007 when you created Seventh.Ink, and then also how would you describe your brand? So kind of give me a little bit about the origin story of how it all started, and then how you would describe it if someone said, "Hey Matt, what's Seventh.Ink?"
Sure. So I'm going to go back a little further. In 2004, I believe it was. Yeah, 2004. I graduated college, Art Institutes, International, Minnesota. So I got my bachelor's in graphic design, essentially. And I knew I wanted to get into that. And I basically went in with the mindset of I was going to be a freelancer. So that's basically what I was looking for. It was really hard to get a job. So I I found a job here and I found a job there. Eventually ended up at an agency that I really enjoyed for a minute there, and just kind of realized that like regardless of where I was working, something, doing client work was fulfilling in its own way, but I wanted to do my own thing. So I basically was kind of, before I finished my college career there, I actually interned at a screen printing shop that was right down the road from me. So I had this immediate love of like the screen printing process, the idea of making art on t-shirts. I did a few shirts for the shop. It was mostly, those were very different from the rest of the stuff they were doing in the shop there, but they were kind of like a small hit. So that was fun and just kind of like a little dopamine, to go, oh,
Yeah.
if someone likes your stuff, that feels good, right?
Yeah.
So I basically kind of got into my little beginning stages of my career there with my actual career and just thought, I want to start a clothing company on the side. It wasn't my dream to basically do that full time necessarily, because I really do enjoy working with clients. I really do enjoy the art of design and illustration and stuff like that. And I do like executing people's visions. And there is a dopamine hit that comes from having a happy client at the end of the day,
Yeah.
essentially. So it's very fulfilling in all these different realms, right? But I essentially got in and just was like, I'm going to make some t-shirts. And it started off a little funny. I talk about this a lot. I have a Patreon. I talk about this a lot. I do these archives videos. I call them archives. Go back to the early years of the brand and kind of do like a video. And I think I've done like 4 or 5 so far, the first 4 or 5 years. It is pretty funny to see where you start when it's almost 20 years ago and just what you like, what was I thinking with this? Like, at the time, it was like, if I put something on a t-shirt, people are going to buy it. That's just my mindset. It's like,
Yeah.
and that's not how it works. Just because I thought something was funny or cool doesn't mean anybody else gives a crap about that, right? So there was definitely a lot of learning curves along the way to kind of get to where we are today. And it's still a side gig. I still do have a full time job, and it's a lot, but it's very fulfilling all the same. So.
Yeah. How would you describe if someone, if someone you told them, "Hey, I have a clothing brand," like do you have like, I have like my own little elevator pitch, like a quick pitch. Do you have a quick pitch on like when someone asks you like, "Hey, what's Seventh.Ink?"
Yeah, yeah. It's essentially, it's just original illustrations on clothing, essentially, right? And so that's basically what I say. And they go, "Well, what kind?" And I go, "Well, I'll do everything from nautical to a lot of Halloween to spooky Christmas," and that kind of pulls people in, coffee stuff, and then people go, "Oh," and they get a quick understanding of like, okay, so you do like all these things, right? They're
Yeah.
similar, but they're also different. I mean, you see my nautical stuff; it's like octopuses and anchors and sharks, and sure, some of the shark stuff have like skeletons in it, so there's a little spooky crossover there. But you wouldn't necessarily see the the two shirts, on the rack next to each other and assume they were from the same person necessarily.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of everything, right?
No, and I think that's great, and that's one of the things that I've enjoyed seeing because I've been following you for a while, so I've seen your brand kind of do that growth and evolution through the years, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think you kind of realized and you kind of brought it up a little bit when you were starting to make like the cool like humorous tees. You kind of noticed almost like I would say like a shift even in your customer base and also in kind of how you were doing stuff where it's now more cohesive collections, more kind of more of like grouped together. I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about that because for me as a brand, like I'm still kind of in that mode where I should probably think of doing more of a series, but I kind of wanted to know where your mindset and what made you realize like, hey, this works out better when I do a release type of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just released Haunted Collection 15 last week, and that's obviously 15 years of doing that. That started off as like, I just want to do Halloween shirts, and I think I'll do them every year, and this will be fun, right? Well, it obviously got to the point where it's almost out of hand. A couple of years ago, it was absolutely out of hand. I had, I think, like 30 or 40 different garment types times the multiples you need to get on the runs in my house. And it was like a breaking point. Whereas, like, kind of exploded for a second. And then I realized, like, this stuff is everywhere. Like, every room in the house has boxes. This is too much. So, like, what makes a solid release and then what makes a solid series? So, I've kind of broken the two apart in my brain in my mind a little bit. The Haunted Collection is an annual series, and so people look forward to that. I look forward to that. It's obviously Halloween. It kicks off the year for a lot of people. I've scooted it up to now. It's the beginning of September. It used to be the beginning of October, which is already too late. So that's that. But then when I think about my series, like other series that I do, the I have all these yellow shirts, right, with the sharks. I do like a shark series. I have four different designs, and I basically just did one a number of years ago, and then just thought that was fun. I'll do another, but I waited a year, and then I go, well, that was fun. Why don't I just do one of these every summer as able, when I have time? And I'm not going to make an announcement every year, but if I have time and energy to do it in the spring and have it ready for the summer, then I will do that, and it seems to work. So that's a good way to basically have a series going on that does not have a commitment. But now, when you go to a show, or you go to my website or whatever, and you see like a cohesive line of them together, it looks like people who are coming for the first time. They don't know that some of them are 5, 6 years old. You know what I mean? They'll come and they go, oh, look at this stuff. So it slowly grows. The whole thing is like a slow burn for me. And so when I think of some of my smaller series like that, that's kind of the mentality I go into, because releases are fun, but there's a lot of buildup, right? You have to plan a lot, you have to hype people up, and you have to hopefully people come to it. And if they don't, and you've got this whole series that you put together that you put all this effort into, and it's especially with a new series or a new annual release or something, it can be pretty deflating if nobody shows up. Right? Then
Yeah.
you're just like, I don't want to do this again. So, or what did I do wrong? And it's never like, you know, this is an achievement just to get this out the door. Like, and it is, you know. So there's a bunch of different mentalities that come with all that.
So there's a few things that I felt as you were talking about this. One was because you definitely have, in I guess in some terms they say more SKUs or more, you definitely have quite of an expansion of your brand. Like your brand, like for me, I could tell people I do t-shirts, I do hats, and like stickers, pins, and whatnot. But you've like, and when you were saying like how it took over your house, I believe it, because you have everything from t-shirts, tank tops, swimwear, button downs, skater dresses, leggings, patches, pins, stickers. I mean, that what was the I guess my first thing is, since everything's getting printed and you're doing everything, I'm assuming everything's in your house or somewhere in your, like somewhere being all held, because you're not doing anything print to garment, right? Or you're doing,
No.
or is everything's printed and you have.
Yeah, everything is. Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes I wonder if I should be doing it this way, but right, everything is printed in runs, and then it's inventoried, and then it's all together, right, and it's
Yep.
ready to go. And so for me, a couple of years ago, I moved everything to fulfillment because it did take over my house. That Haunted Collection I mentioned was a breaking point almost for me, for my household. It was like, okay, this doesn't make sense anymore. And it's not like it maintained that level forever going forward and everything was always gravy, but like that was a wake up call that, hey, this has to physically be out of here. This is taking up too much of our time and energy. And then, if you have a good weekend or a good series of weekends or weeks of sales and stuff, and you're trying to do a full time job and make new artwork and blah, blah, live life and all this stuff, it gets out of hand. So I did have to move everything to fulfillment. So it's interesting because fulfillment has helped in so many ways. It is expensive, but it has taken off all of the pressure of getting the orders out the door on time, which is nice, especially on a sale weekend or a release, or if I'm out of town on vacation, I don't have to turn my store off anymore. Those are all benefits. Downside is I can't physically see what I have, so I just keep going, and I don't know if that's a great thing, right? Like the items just keep getting added and added and added, and I make new stuff, and it's exciting and it's fun and it seems to be working now, but it's interesting to go, well, how much is too much? And like, I can look at my store obviously and see how much I have, but without a physical, impression of it, it's
Yeah.
interesting to lose a little sight of that and go, whoa, this is getting even more out of control maybe now. So
Yeah.
it's still a small brand. It's still just me doing all the marketing, artwork, and all that stuff. So it is a thing where you got to be kind of careful too, and not to go too far or grow
Yeah.
too fast or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? But off
Yeah.
one you can chew. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's something that's interesting for me, because like right now my wife basically told me, She's like, you can't print any more shirts. Like, she's like, you can't, you got, and I said, yeah, but because I think, and you tell me if this is kind of, because obviously I'm not a designer. So like, obviously I come up with the idea, I work with designers, but it's all my vision. And I basically make what my vision becomes a reality. So I'm like, I'm your dopamine. Like if, if I was your client, I'd be your dopamine because that's kind of how I roll. However, I don't know if it's something similar to you in this case because I do doodle everything, so I have like an idea of what I want it to be what it look like, and I work with different artists. But one of the things that I notice is once I've created this idea and it's gone to printing or I have it, I like it's almost like a rush goes away and it's like, okay, I already have it. Now what's the next idea?
Yeah.
And then even though like you still have all it's almost like it's a because it's so much concept to do everything all the way to photo and do everything that you're almost like, okay, like I'm kind of done with this one now. I'm ready to go to the next thing, which is good. But at the same time, you're like, well, I now have a boxes of shirts I have to sell,
Yeah.
but I still get the rush when I get a new design. So it's like I'm stuck because then it's like, and you mentioned something that you're like, hey, if someone comes across you and they haven't seen you or ever seen you before, they don't know a shirt's 4 or 5 years old, a design is 4 or 5 years old. They just know it's new to them.
Yes.
And that's what I keep telling myself because there's some designs where I'm like, this didn't hit. But then I'm like, well, maybe I just didn't market it or target it right to the right person, or the right people still haven't seen it yet. So then it's like a balance, and I think that's why I'm kind of curious, like how because in your world, like you even like you've like because people have asked me before, they're like, hey, how come you don't do more women's shirts and more this? And I'm like, well, that's like a whole bunch of like sizing and all these other things. So like when I look at your stuff where it's like button like all these things, I'm just like, holy cow, like how is he managing or handling all that, because it's extra cost, and then it's for me it's like almost like a crapshoot too, like are people gonna buy this or not buy this?
It
So
is.
like how do you handle that, or how do you kind of look at that, especially like when you have a design that comes out like you said, like maybe that's 5 years old and you still have a bunch. Like some people kind of get a little crazy and they're like, I'm gonna put it on sale, I want to get rid of it. Like
Yeah.
are you
It's
in that same mindset?
Oh man, there are so many things you touched on that I want to like. I'm gonna try not
Yeah,
to lose track because they're all fantastic. They're all rabbit
sorry.
holes. No, no, that's great. This is perfect. This is awesome. I mean, there's so many things here to discuss. Um, let's start with the most recent one, the sale thing. So for me, okay, because this is a slow burn and because it's not my bread and butter, obviously I do want things to sell. But if something doesn't sell or sell out, I used to get a little anxious about having the inventory, but then I started doing shows more, and I realized if I don't have that inventory, then I have to what reprint before every show. And as my booth got bigger, like I mean, it's already insane just to pack that stuff up, let alone consider reprinting because I clearanced everything already or something like
Yeah,
that. So for me, rolling inventory forward is a way for a small business to just sustain itself, and it's the unfortunate side effect is that now you have inventory, now you have invested money, you hopefully get that money back, right? And as you continue to go forward, you're trying to basically recoup and make, you want to make some money on it too. I mean, that's part of the point. For me, it's an art project. I mean, if I could do it without money involved and just do stuff and make stuff, if that's the way the world worked, that would be the fulfillment for me.
yeah,
I don't expect to get rich off this because it's 20 years now and I'm not seeing that,
yeah.
right? It's
I'm with
definitely
you, man.
there's a reason it's a side business. I will say that. Not to say it doesn't do well, but it's retail at the end of the day. I always tell people that. And we talked about this. I talked to a lot of people about that. But when it comes down to clearancing and selling stuff off, I don't believe in doing that clearance thing where you go 70 or 80% off unless, I've joked about it recently because my inventory maybe is getting out of hand to where maybe I should have like an insane but still for me, I wouldn't want to lose money on it. So it doesn't matter how long I've held an item. I don't want to lose money on it because it's still a part of my inventory that, like I said, bring to shows, have presence on the website. I don't want to have holes in my website. Yeah, and then the rest of it is a leap of faith. When you talk about going into new products that you've never done before, I put one toe in first, right? So the first button down I did that started all these button downs, dresses, leggings, all that stuff. First button down I did was a hang loose button down. It's the yellow one with the sharks all over it, and I just thought it would be fun. I believe I did the button down and the swim trunks at the same time because the same pattern. I just thought
Yeah,
let's dive in, but I only did one design. It didn't take off. It was new. It was also 2021, I believe. So people are still coming back from COVID and all that stuff. So I just kind of thought, let's see what happens. And it started to pick up at shows, though. It was interesting. People at shows in person were buying it a lot, but it wasn't selling very much online. And that's kind of the interesting thing with like putting out a new product. If you're not known for making that product, people are either not used to seeing it, they might be leery, they might not care. When you have 10 of those products after a couple of years have gone by on your store, and you go to, like, now I have a button down section and that's growing every year.
Yeah.
Now people are like, they have one button down that they bought somewhere, a show or online, whatever. Now they're like, oh, I can't wait to see what new button downs you have. It's like a whole slow cycle, right? So another good example is last year I introduced coins, like this sort of thing, with my Haunted collection. They sold okay, but they sold to the people who already like coins and that sort of thing. I don't make a lot of. It's the first coin I ever did, right?
Yeah.
So they took a while to kind of get going through, and I still haven't sold out of every single one that I've done, and nor do I expect to. But the coins I released this year sold a lot quicker than the ones from last year. That's a very good example of that, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I like that. And I think and I like it because obviously it's a reminder for me because and I think one of the things for me sometimes to look at, and I'm kind of curious to get your perspective because like so when I usually do like the events for me are huge because that's where I get my dopamine. That's where I get like the validation
Oh yeah.
of everything compared to online. So obviously when I do markets, those are what I like. The hard part for me is and it's probably something similar to you because I've seen your setup and I've even joked about it when we did a previous an event together because I was like I am the before and you're the after kind of thing because yours is like this is what a professional setup looks like and mine was like here's what I'm trying to be. I'm like I'm the little engine that could,
I
but
disagree.
well, and I can say at least for the indoor setup. An outdoor setup, I can at least say, okay, when I do an outdoor setup, I have usually about 24 shirts at an event, but that's still like I have more shirts than that. And so like that's a hard one because I don't want to bring like an old design of something. So then it's like, well, what do I do with it? So then it's like, oh, well, so you can only have 24. So like I'm just kind of curious when you would do you do sometimes just kind of like, hey, we're gonna swap this one out for something else just to see what it does. When you bring like an old design that you may have some inventory, because the other thing is, and I know I kind of give so many questions at once. You and I talked about this when we saw each other that you're at a point since you do fulfillment, you actually have your own inventory for shows, correct?
Yes, yeah. So part of that is that's a twofold. Like there's a few things going on there because yeah, I do have my own inventory for shows. That stays in the garage, right? And if I have a good show, I'm sitting there at the show with my notes app on my phone, and I'm going, this one sold out, this one sold out, and that doesn't mean I sold 50. That means I had 4 left, and they finally sold out,
Yeah,
right? Or I sold out of larges in this design. Make sure you don't forget to get
restock.
more larges sent over from fulfillment if I have them. Because what happens is, I don't know about you, but I don't have time to re-inventory after every show. It's not because I'm so busy with getting ready for the next show. It's because I have all the other things we mentioned, job, life, all this stuff.
Yeah,
And it's insane to think about pulling out all the totes. I mean, I used to do this, and that's maybe why it's insane because I'm tired of doing it. Is pulling out all the totes after every show and re-inventorying and then thinking about what I had to do. And I realized if I just do it in real time, it's life is so much easier, right? It's I don't have to get sweaty in the garage. I can just like go, okay, this is what I'm out of, right? Sometimes I will be at the show and I'll go, okay, it would be interesting to swap out. I know I have a stack of like 20 of this shirt that I haven't pulled out for a while. Let's try putting that in. Sometimes I bring, and I'm notorious for this with the people who help me with the shows. Sometimes I bring a few extra totes of all the other stuff that's not part of the display but could be. And then what we end up doing is like if we can fit one in or swap one out on the show floor, then we do. But what usually ends up happening is we don't, and then they just sit under the table, and so they're just extra totes in the way. So those are the sorts of
yeah,
nuances of doing shows, right? But it is funny. I want to go back to something real quick because I know you said your wife said you can't print anymore
yeah,
because of space reasons, and I'm not going to assume too much, but we're in Florida. I'm from Minnesota originally. We
yeah.
had basements there. We
No,
had
but yeah, I'm
yards.
from Jersey. No basement here either.
Yeah, we had
Being in
yards and
Florida.
basements, and by yard you can add a shed or an outbuilding to a yard if you have
Yes.
the money. There's no room for expansion in Florida. It's typically single level home. Your garage is, you know what I mean? Everything is
Yeah,
very confined because of just what it is. We're in popular areas to live for tourism and all stuff. And it's just like, okay, very limiting on the space. So now we're using, I don't know about you, but I was using this room I'm in. This is now my office for work. But I mean, this is just a 10 by 10 bedroom. It's nothing insane. So it's like when this was full, it didn't take much to fill it, right? I had this closet behind me that I had all the shirts on, all the shelves for a while, and
yep,
extra inventory in the garage and stuff like that. But now I'm spreading between a room and the garage. Then the garage is filling up. And then that 1 year, like I said, where it exploded in the house. And it's like, because of the confined restriction of space that we have, because we're doing this out of our homes, it is interesting how that like shapes what we're doing. And like in your case, you got to maybe get out with the old to or get rid of something in order to get a new one in order because of the
correct.
space reasons, right? Like,
Yeah. And that's kind of where we are. Like we bought, so we originally, like in the very beginning part, I was in a 10 by 10 room, and it was literally everything was in there, same idea. And I would laugh because it was our guest bedroom, and we ended up like taking a bed out, putting a futon in. I felt bad because my parents, when they would come, they couldn't even like really stay with us, because of how everything was. And then when we decided to move 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, we bought a bigger house because we're like, okay, our daughter's going to grow and she's going to have her friends over and stuff like that. We need a little bit more space. And we were lucky that the house that we bought had like a garage with like a bay. So it was kind of almost like a 3-car garage, but it really was like a 2-car with like a bay. And so what I did was my wife and I made deals like when we were looking at houses, because she wanted a conservation area behind us and I wanted that bay to be closed off and made into a room. So it's like maybe the size of like a 13 by 8 room is kind of what it is. So this is kind of where I'm at. And so then I still have my original IKEA shelves, and now I've just kind of added, so now both sides of this room are just full on IKEA shelves, 5 levels up for like small to 3x is what I have. And then I have a door so that I can close the door. So because right now it's literally folded shirts that look, everything's folded, kind of like folded like this or folded just regular.
yeah.
And then I have stacks of totes and boxes. And so I close the door because my wife's like, I can't see this mess that you have in here, even though it's my mess, not her mess. But she's like, I don't want to see it because it's like, she goes, I feel like it's sucking all your energy out of you, your creative energy, because it's like a maze of a labyrinth of boxes now.
Your feng shui is off, right? That's,
Oh, totally off.
I mean,
Totally.
and trust me, dude, it looks nice behind me, but there's crap all over the floor. There's all sorts of boxes. Like I can show you all this stuff.
I'm gonna
But
take a selfie when we're done, and I'm gonna take it so you can see my mess. I'm gonna send God bless my mess, and I want you to do the same,
that
so
sounds
we can
great.
share. We both. I at least. That's why I appreciate talking with you, because like that's one of the big things that I absolutely love is that you have no. You wear it as a badge. Like a lot of people kind of have this thing where this whole idea of perception, and I understand perception of like my brand is bigger than this, and I agree with it. Like obviously I want to think, some people say think as a we and instead of me and things like that, and I get all of that.
Yeah,
However, I am just like you. I'm a one man brand. Like I am a one man deli shop is what I am.
yeah,
And I love the fact that and you do it in a really good way based on how your website is done. And I know it's like your web development experience and your design and just kind of a keen eye for it, because you do a really good job of saying, hey, I am a one man brand. However, it's very professionally laid out, very professional. So it's not like you can't do all these things, but it is a lot of things that you're balancing.
yeah. It is, and you bring up some really good points there. I honestly, since day one, I used to change all the I's to we's on the website. And for example, in the very early years, because I was like, Johnny Cupcakes was blowing up, and I'm like, whoa, I need to be bigger than I am,
Yeah.
right? And that was just something that I tried for a minute, and it didn't feel. And it's not that he was doing that. I'm not saying that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying I was trying to chase what he was doing, right? And there was other folks too.
The hundreds, all of
Oh
those.
yeah, all those guys, and it was just like it was very impressive. How can I seem bigger, right? How can my stuff seem more important? And it's funny because it didn't take long for me to go. That's not what it is, though. I don't like answering emails and saying, well, actually, it's a one man brand, because people are like, hey, you guys, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay. I think it would be better if it is, since it is a one man brand and this is all my artwork, it would be better for me personally to basically say everywhere this is a one man brand, so that hopefully people will say, oh, that's Matt's work, instead of like that's a team of people, right? Because, and I still get the hey guys, hey guys, hey guys, and I
Yeah,
get it, because people just, they just jump into the contact form and they shoot off a message. But the more that I see the hey Matt, I'm a big fan, or hey Matt, I like your stuff, or just hey Matt, it's like cool. Now we're connecting because you've realized that this is just me, right? And it's interesting too, because I don't know. You and I talked about pricing at the last meetup we did, a little bit. It's been hard the last couple of years with inflation and stuff like that, and I decided that I had to raise my prices, and I really did not want to. Like, I'm really a stickler for making stuff affordable for people,
yeah,
and not being, I don't mean to keep dropping Johnny's name, but Johnny Cupcake shirts have been known to be more expensive. They're high end streetwear. People who are fans of that, they don't care. People who are fans of ours, it's harder to convince them to a degree to pay more, and it's not like we're trying to get rich, we're just trying to cover our bases, right?
yeah,
So the whole point of me bringing this up is I did decide to do a small price increase, and I got some flack for it on Instagram, and none of it was from my customer base. It was more from like some of the ads I roll out and stuff, and people will be like, oh my gosh, $38 for a t-shirt, like, thumbs down. And I'm just like, okay, how do I approach this in a way? Because, yeah, $38 is a lot for a t-shirt. It is. I'm not going to say
yeah,
it's not, but the price of making these t-shirts is so much. Like, people don't understand, especially the, the water-based ink and all this stuff. The
yep,
reason I'm bringing all this up is because in those moments I realized, well, the more honest I am here, the better off it's going to be. And this person probably doesn't even care to see my response, but
yeah,
I feel like I have to respond in some way, whether they care or not. And I basically just said, hey, look, it's just me. I'm doing this. I do all the art. I do everything. The cost went up. I, it is expensive, but it is a high quality item, and it's not for everybody. I understand.
yeah,
So, no hard feelings, but that's just the reality, and that's just the truth. You know what I mean? And so I realized, like, just saying, like, it's just me over here, right? I don't know if they care again, but it's just made it feel more like this is the truth. And then it just made me feel
correct.
better about the choices I've had to make as a business, because I want to stay in business.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
it's crazy.
I totally agree with you, and that's like, and that was a tough one as well for me as well to go up in price. But then I also was like looking around me, and I was like, everyone else has gone up in price, and I'm like, and I'm still trying to, and I'm still doing things with like multiple colors, and I'm doing, and there's like hem tags, and then like,
You're doing a
because you
lot of
have
detail and
your water,
colors.
you have a water base, you have an
Yeah.
inside tag, you have your regular tag, you have another tag, you have a your another print on like your, so you're printing like almost like in three different spots
Mm.
at least minimum,
Yeah.
between the front, the tag, the side, the arm, and things like that. So like all those things add up. And then of course the other big thing is like a lot of, I pretty much get all the time like, man, your shirts are so comfortable, they're so soft, they're so this, and I'm like, yeah, that's because we're using, like, I tell people, quality ingredients in a sandwich, quality ingredients in my
That's
product.
so good. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's
I
kind of what
love
how
that.
I kind of look at it, and that's why I tell people, they're like, "Oh, this is really good," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to give you a crappy sandwich. I'm like, I really want you to be able to like wear it so much to the point that you wear a hole through it because you're wearing it all the time,
Right.
because it's your favorite T-shirt." So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. I had one question that I was going to ask in the beginning. Where did the name? I know like the number 7 is your favorite number, and I know like you're left-handed, and that's why like your logo is on like the left arm sleeve. But where
Yeah.
did the name Seventh Ink come from?
So ink is literally just ink on the t-shirts. It's
Okay.
just, I just trying to be, I already had my design company, again, just me, freelance, is Seventh Fury Studios. And that just came from a random, like, it's just an idea. And I was getting sick of trying to find, like, it came from like, everything's taken, what's original, right? And I just making stuff up and throwing it in Google. And this is 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So Seventh.Ink just like, okay, well, if this is my extension of my clothing brand, then I should consider keeping it part of that. Like, it's technically in the business levels of, like, if you're talking like CPA and taxes and stuff, it's Seventh Fury is the umbrella and Seventh.Ink is a subsidiary. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I get asked all the time if I'm a tattoo artist. At least a couple times every show, right? Hey, are
I
you
could
you
see
do
that.
tattoos? Like, no, it's just the ink on the shirts. And I go, oh, I could see that. you should do tattoos every time. It's always like, I get it. You should do the tattoos. And I go, I'm already very busy. Trust me.
Have you thought of, speaking of that, have you thought of doing like temporary tattoos of some of your designs?
That's a good one. No, I'm not. I haven't really thought of that before.
Huh? Think of that one. I think that would be some of your stuff would be badass to
Interesting.
do, and it'd be pretty easy to probably do to be able to do some temporary tattoos. So next time someone says something, it's something that they can kind of do, and they want to wear something like that. Have you had?
Love
Speaking
that.
of which, have you had anybody? I'm pretty sure you have in all your years. Someone ask you or send you like say, "Hey, look, I used one of your designs to tattoo and tattooed it on myself."
Yeah, yeah. I've gotten It's been more in the last few years because the more Halloween stuff I do, the
Yeah,
more of those I see. I get asked all the time how much would I charge to let them use the art, and I always tell them like, you're already paying for a tattoo. I just want to see a photo of it. If that's
yeah,
cool, if you're comfortable with that, send me a photo on Instagram or tag me on Instagram. And other than that, I'm honored that people would want that, right? Like, why? I'm not going to nickel and dime you for that.
no,
And then I've gotten responses from some people. They've said actually people do, like, certain artists charge for that, and I go, well, I understand that too, maybe, but yeah, that's not me. And I don't know. I'd rather see it I'd rather see the finished product. I think that's very cool,
heck
right?
yeah,
Isn't
man! It's
that
a
like
walking billboard for you too.
crazy? Well, it's crazy. It's amazing to think I drew that and I just wanted to put it on a t-shirt, but then someone put it on their arm. I've
Yeah,
Mapled and Night of the Pumpkin, the two skeleton one. I mean, those are the most I see. And again, Halloween.
yeah.
But it's fun. It's fun. Have you ever had any of that? Has anyone gotten the sandwich done?
So it's funny because I've gotten a few people do like a PB&J and put like like their version of it, but put like Biggie bread. I The funny part is the first tattoo I ever saw was not even a Deli Fresh Threads fan. He just liked my Biggie bread and literally made put Biggie bread on himself. So like the first person that ever did it had no idea who I was, just came across my mascot and basically was like, I want that, and put it on himself.
That's awesome.
So which to me is crazy. And then I've had a few people tell me like they've done sandwich themed tattoos because because of my brand and because they loved I inspired them with like my little mascot, so they kind of did stuff like that. I do have Biggie bread on me because I figured if there's gonna be if anyone should be wearing, representing my own brand and people could see it all the time, I figured that's like me wearing Deli Fresh Threads all the time.
That's
So I
cool.
have one on my ankle, which is great. When you
I love
go through, when you mentioned Mabel and some of the your collection, how do you decide, like, what's your creative process? Because obviously, like you said, you're doing a different series for Halloween and like Christmas and things like that. Like, what's the creative process when you're thinking of these things, and like deciding on the collection you're going to do?
As well, some of it stems from just like that the summer series, for example, like I was talking about the sharks. That was like I just wanted to do the one shark thing, and then I realized it would be fun to do another, and so on and so forth. So then it becomes that in that situation it becomes like a, well, summer's coming. I better think of something else in this series to do, or I better decide if I'm not going to do it. Again, not announcing it in that particular
Yeah,
context. When it comes to Halloween and Christmas stuff, it's like that Halloween line has evolved so much that it always did pretty well, but it wasn't until Night of the Pumpkin came out, and that was 2000, I think 18, that was like I struck a chord with the perfect. I'm not. Oh, let me rephrase that. For me, the perfect design at the time, right? Like it was just like people seemed to really like that, and I go, well, I should do more skeletons and pumpkins. So the next year I did mapled skeleton with a leaf. I thought that'd be fun. Okay, those two are insane. Like it's they're most stolen, ripped off, recreated designs that I've ever done. I mean, they're every year I got to play whack a mole with like cease and desist stuff. It's very taxing actually. This year's been quieter, so I'm very thankful. But because those kind of got the ball rolling, now Hana Collection has kind of become the skeletons and the leaves and all this sort of stuff. And pumpkin. Okay, so now that makes sense. Before that, it was what is it? There was a werewolf with a skull. There was a raven. I mean, there's all these different things that they're not cohesive. They're just spooky, and that's fine. But once I started down that skeleton path, I realized I kind of have something here, right? So same with Spooky Christmas. I did the Saint Nick design. It's like a skeleton Santa. He's smoking a
yeah,
pipe, big old beard. People liked it. I go, okay, well, I'm going to do a frosty. It's not a skeleton, but it's a scary frosty, similar colorways.
yeah.
No white for the snow. It's like a tan, so it's like got a little vintage feel to it. And that has become a little theme over there as well. So when it comes time to make new stuff every year, I go, okay, well, what else can I make that'll be in the at least the color scheme, if not the theme. But
Yeah.
I also wonder, like this year in particular, I wondered if I was starting to run its course a little bit, and that was in the design process. I basically carving autumn. I don't have one with me. The new design that I have, it's a skeleton over a, it's a hooded skeleton in the woods or whatever over like a pumpkin, right? And he's carving the pumpkin or he's carving it to a jack o' lantern. There's some light coming out. It's the same elements, but it's quite a bit different than some of the other ones. But then I also did, I brought back Midnight Owl, which is a 10-year-old design. I redid it, and people seem to love that. So it's kind of like, okay, now I think I'm opening up for next year. I don't even know what I'll do. I might focus on another spooky animal of some sorts and then a skeleton. Like if I'm doing skeletons every single year, I think eventually it's going to get old, right? So you got
Yeah.
to kind of find a way to ride the lightning for a little bit and then keep it fresh at the same time. It's very tricky, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, it's interesting. You
That's
don't know
it.
what people want till they tell you they don't want it by not grabbing it, and then you go, "Oh,
Correct.
I thought we were having fun." No, okay, cool. I should have just made that as a wallpaper for myself, like whatever.
That that's so true. You're like, okay, yeah, yeah, we're gonna keep on with this. Um,
Hmm.
so I mentioned before you do a really good job on like your website and everything, and with illustration and the web design. And I was kind of curious, like, what do you, what are some things that you notice? I mean, obviously you and I doing this for a while, we've come across many clothing brands that have come and gone
Hmm.
through the years.
Lots.
Some have lasted, some don't. And I think I will say, I will say for me, one of the reasons why my brand has been able to last, one, I think it's something, it's a passion project, something I love, but I think it's also the fact that I do have a full time job just like you, so I'm able to let it do what you do, which is like the hardest part for a brand because a lot of us don't. Everyone wants it to be quick and be the Johnny Cupcakes or be those big brands, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's one of those things where it may take a while for it to kind of go, and it just kind of grows and develops, and then and through massive years, and all of a sudden it may explode, or it just may pay for itself and type of thing like that. But I'm kind of curious, what do you think are some of the success points or recipe? What do you think has been your recipe for success for doing this for so long?
Yeah, it's interesting because I basically agree with you the fact that I have a full time job, and I mean that's kind of it, right? And shows as well, in person markets, shows, conventions, all of that stuff. I've been doing. I kind of had a high point a couple years ago, and it's way too much. But I do about one a month or so. If you average it throughout the year, so I do about 12 shows a year, maybe a little more. But without the shows in person and without the full time job, if this was just an online retail brand, or even if I try to make a brick and mortar, I told my sister yesterday, literally, like, if I didn't have my job, I would, and I just had this brand, I would be living in one of the boxes that I get my shirts in. Like, that would be my house because it's just, it is a passion project. And that is the reason that I'm able to sustain it for so long. And I honestly, there's points where I'm like, okay, if this was all I was doing, I'd probably pivot and wrap it up, But because I can just let it go, it's funny. I'll have years where I'm just kind of tired. Life gets in the way. We're not in our 20s anymore. We don't have that like 3, 4 a.m. energy. Get back up at 6, keep going. At least I don't. I don't know about you.
Nope, not at all.
Right. So that grind energy is starting to lose a little bit, and it's also like, how much of my life do I want to give to this and get you get so much back in return and stuff, and it is fulfilling. But it's an interesting like personal question for yourself, right? So there are times when I'm literally like, maybe I should start to slow down and just do a couple things a year and just let it ride, and let it start to simmer down a little bit, But then you have a good show or a good release, or somebody's so excited, and they reach out to you with a great email, and you go, you know what? Forget. I'm gonna keep going. Um, it's crazy, but I do think it's funny because a couple years ago, Johnny Cupcake started doing that little road tour. I don't know if you ever caught that, where you
Yep.
zip
Yep.
around um, that's fascinating to me because a part of me has always wondered, like, how fun would it be to do something like that? But the reality is, we have jobs. If I was in my early 20s and I didn't have a family and I had nothing to lose and I could just go for it and just travel, and I've known people who have done this and just travel and set up pop ups and do. I mean, it might be in a different spot than it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're you and I'm assuming you do mostly local shows.
Yep.
Um, there's a lot to offer in the Florida area, you know, between Tampa and Orlando and everywhere, Jacksonville, Miami. But Florida is like, you know, the bottom part of this of the states, and then you have all the rest of this, you know, that we haven't really traveled and spread our shirts through. You know, I've done Chicago and stuff like that, and it's just amazing to think of like, what if you did do something like that? Like, how would that change? Because marketing in newsletters and people finding you online and advertising and all that stuff is fine, but connecting with people in person, like you said earlier,
Yeah.
for me, that's where you actually get true lifelong fans. They shook your hand, or they spoke to you, or you told them about what's up, or and they realized you're a real person behind it. That's why bands go on tour, so people can see them, right? Like this is but we don't have time to go on tour all the time. So it is very interesting. And this is a little long winded, I guess, but
No, no, no. This is beautiful because it's
you
like
know,
these are all things that I've pondered and think about. Like I would love to do like that idea, go on a road tour, go to different places, hit sandwich, do like a sandwich event, and then sell my shirts at the event. I mean, I've thought of these things. It's just one of those where, and that's a hard one, especially with you and I having full time jobs, having a full time job, and also trying to run a business. Also being the fact that I know you have a household, you have a family, so it's like incorporating. How do I balance that? How do you balance then like because you're also doing, and that's one of the big things. Like when I said the whole idea of like your setup is set up for, I would say almost kind of like not just a 1 day thing. It's more of like a weekend convention, weekend, larger. It's a larger scale event. The type of events that you're doing, which obviously requires then that, and it's that whole what you were kind of talking about, like how much time do I put in? You start sometimes when like, God forbid, you pick a bad event
yeah,
and the event sucks, because then you're thinking it's that whole like cost benefit analysis. Like, is the cost of my time cost, not even the money cost sometimes, like the time cost of like I spent all this time doing all of this and doing all the things that come with it. And I now don't like, and I'm not even seeing like monetary aspect of it. And I got to deal with, like, you know what I mean? It's like, then you start looking, oh my God, I could have spent time with my family, or I could have done this. So that's always a tough balance that I have to do sometimes when I'm trying to figure out like how many events do I do? When do I do the events? Because obviously I feel like this is the time of year now, that whole third, like that September fourth quarter. That's like when, like, that's our money time, I think, is like when I'm like, this is when I do start doing events. It's cooler out. People want to spend money. And this is where it starts happening. And that's you're like, I got to go out there. I got to go see the people. But then you also have to balance, like, I don't want to just go out to go out. I want to go out and sell and also be with the people.
yeah. And it's interesting because sometimes by this time of the year, you're a little tired already. You know what I mean? Like it's been a whole, like you're getting towards the end of the year. This is when if you want to go to like, naturally we're animals, right? We're supposed to start working in towards hibernation towards the winter, especially like in Minnesota. So it's like our natural, we naturally slow down this time of year. So to try and like kick it into gear and like go sell and do all these markets and stuff, it's always interesting to see how it goes and how tapped out you get at this time of year. But I do find that you and I talked about this before, but I've done some shows that have been pretty far, 14, 15 hours away, and I don't do many like that. I do like Chicago's C2E2 is more like 20-ish hours away, and I drive to those because I have to with all my stuff.
Yeah.
But Chicago is one that I know that's a big show, right? That's a huge show. If I do poorly at that show, my mentality before I ever did it was if I do poorly at this giant show, then I'm either doing something wrong or I don't know. I got to reassess some things because this is a big show. I've done some other shows that are smaller that are kind of like, they're a little riskier, and some of them have been complete washes as far as financial, and like you say, time is a factor as well. But when you come back and you start to see residuals from online sales from that area over the next couple months, you start to realize, okay, people did take my card, people did sign up for my newsletter or follow me on Instagram, and now it's Christmas, and now I'm running a Black Friday sale or whatever, and now I'm getting orders from Indiana or Ohio or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, just because I didn't see it immediately doesn't mean there wasn't an impact. Doesn't mean I didn't get some customers. And every shirt that that somebody grabs at any event anywhere, they're going to wear that shirt and they're going to talk about that shirt. And so that is just like getting into each market just by sprinkling your shirts around. And it is a slow build, right? That's why I said like that Johnny Cupcakes thing. Imagine taking like a year and just going, we're road trip. We're every 2 weeks, we're in a different pop up and we're doing a whole 50 state thing. I mean, that's a good way to just get it all out there. That would be like a dream, right? Take a year off and just do that. And
Yeah.
you get to travel. I think that that's, I mean, think of all the sandwiches out there that you could
Oh
try,
God, you
right?
don't even know, dude.
It would be
That's like
amazing.
that is the dream. If someone asked me, I'm like, that is the dream right there.
Yeah.
Like, be able to do what he did with the sprinter, bring all his stuff in, put it in a sprinter, and then just travel to
Just
each
go.
place and do pop ups. Like I loved it. My whole thing is, and I think that's what killed me is in his world, he's big enough where he could pull that off because he had a long enough of a he had a big enough of a draw where people knew and he had lines of people waiting. I do it. I don't know if I would what I would pull. So it's like one of those where it's like what is it worth me to do? I would have to do either a festival or some kind of event like that where I'm like I'm not the main event but I'm part of the event.
Yeah.
Is probably what I've thought of. The hard part for me also is that is like, okay, well, how much are you bringing? What are you bringing? What is the cost involved? And in your case, like I said, your thing is so big, you need help. You can't do it all by yourself. I mean, it is. I mean, it took me forever to build my little setup and indoors, and yours is like is this massive setup indoors. And I don't know if you even do outdoor events or mostly indoor events.
Sparingly.
Yeah,
I've had some bad outdoor
exactly.
events where I've lost
No.
inventory or I've lost a lot. I've just, it's been, I'll do some, I'll do one day,
Yeah.
but the multi day where you leave your tent up and all your stuff's inside and
Yep.
the crazy rainstorm comes in and blows everything over and all your shirts are on the ground the next morning in
Yep.
puddles. Like I'm done with that. So,
No, no, no,
um,
for sure.
so yeah, but
Um, so I'm gonna selfishly ask a question because I know I've known you for a while and I've loved everything that you do, but I'm kind of selfish. Selfishly, I'm gonna ask, and I don't usually ask this, but this is one of those things where I've been following you for so long, and I'm kind of curious because I want sometimes it's when you're so close to the perspective of it, you don't tend to sometimes see the outside part of it. Like, I don't know, like when you're so close into it, you don't see it. So
yeah.
from an outside perspective, is there anything that you think my brand of deli fresh threads that maybe I'm not hitting or a mark of, or you're like, hey, how come you're not doing something like this? Like, I know, like when I talked to Scott from Great Scott Design, he was like, dude, you should do an indoor, like your indoor setup should be totally like, the like Reddit, like he goes, I already have it like kind of themed, but he's like, you need to have, if you do, but I don't even do indoor events, but he says you do like red and white tiles of like on the floor and things like that to make it look more sandwich related, which I think is a great idea. It just becomes more a larger scale thing. But I'm just kind of curious, looking and seeing as my brand, outside perspective from someone, is there anything that you think I'm missing the mark on, or you think that, hey, how come you haven't done this, or maybe you should do something like this? I'm just kind of curious if anything comes to mind, and if you don't, that's perfectly fine.
Well, I have
But I'm
ideas.
just kind of curious when you've looked at me and seen me, especially when we were across from each other,
Mhm.
was there anything that kind of hit that you're like, oh, he really should be doing something more of this?
Well, first off, let me say Scott is insane in a good way.
He is, and I
His
love him.
setup has driven me to reconsider so many things, and I've known him for a few years now, and we Airbnb a lot at the shows we do together because we're good buds now.
Yep.
Both of our families are good friends now, actually, but it's like he always has something new. He always has something crazy that he's a maniac. Like I don't know where he gets his time. So
Yeah.
like he's very inspirational when he comes up with his ideas.
And I love it.
And I gotta hand it to him. He just blows the whole display out of the water, and he consistently evolves, which is impressive. That said, it's interesting because he has the tiki theme, you have the deli theme, and I don't have a theme personally other than just displaying my stuff. So I've always kind of been like, okay, well, I'm different. I don't have a gimmick. Let's say it's just the art, right? Your stuff is so interesting because it is in that food realm. There is so many things you could consider doing. Obviously, all of this adds money and space. But like one thing that would be crazy, I remember commenting about the red and white checkered pattern
Yeah.
picnic table. I thought that was a great touch, and I think that's the tip of the iceberg, right? Because I mean, if you wanted to go crazy, you could get, and not to exactly copy Johnny Cupcakes again. You can sense a theme here, but to get the deli wheel, the counter, the glass, and
Yeah,
have
the
the stuff
sneeze
in there.
guard type of thing.
Yeah, get like the classic Subway thing, and then wrap the bottom of it. And honestly, the bottom of it on the backside is all the doors are off or open or closed or whatever, and that's your inventory. You just reach down, grab the shirt out, it's ready to go. That could be one thing. I do think it's interesting because you have an opportunity to do, and I don't know how they would sell. So right, you'd have to think about this, but like napkins with your stuff on it, or just general like I don't know, like food related products that actually would be a cool thing in the
I've
kitchen,
looked at tea
right?
towels. I've looked at like
Tea
tea towels
towels.
as a
I
possibility.
was gonna say bandanas, but it didn't quite feel right, right? Tea
Yeah.
towels is a better, yeah, tea towels for sure. I mean, um, that I'm trying to think of what else you could do, but that line of thing and thinking only lends more to the realism of the sandwich and the bread. You know what I mean? All that
Yeah.
stuff. Like, it's interesting because you start to have these. You got the clothing, and now you're starting to sell like little merch items, like in koozies. I think you do koozies, right?
I don't, but I should.
Oh, that's another anything you could do with a picnic or for lunch, right? Like I tried koozies and they're fine, but I don't have a theme going on, right? So it's kind of like I don't know where this fits in with my stuff, but
Yeah.
anything like that I think would, because imagine having all that stuff on your even if you don't do the whole sneeze guard thing, but just even on the table you have now, the more items you have that are like, well, I really like your shirts but I can't afford a shirt right now, but what, oh, a keychain that's like a little, the little guy, the acrylic
Yeah.
keychain, like all that stuff. I think all of that could just kind of just it would be a nice display.
Yeah.
I will say one more thing. I started doing beach towels this summer, and I think I had them set up at the show in this manner when you saw me. But I had one of my friends is like, why aren't you displaying them like rolled up and stacked up? So there's like a stack of beach towels and all the different designs, nice little stacks of each design. And I was like, okay. And then I did it and I go, wow, this looks really nice. Like it just adds like a whole different level of like, what are those? Because there's pins, and I've seen pins and patches before. I've seen shirts. What are those? And people walk over and they don't exactly fly off the shelf. They're a high priced item, but
Yeah.
um, anything like that that gets you that sort of like, this is interesting, and different, and I mean, stuff people
Yeah.
don't see often. I think all of that would add up to a nice rounding out. Yeah.
I love that, man, and I appreciate that. It's all good stuff. And yeah, I have thought about like the maybe not the napkins because I do put a stamped napkin in my bags, but I have thought of tea towels. I'm just trying to figure out the what would be the best option for it. But that is something that I've thought of wanting to do because I do love the idea of little incorporations. Like I do have like a sandwich spreader and things like that, and then I have like the enamel pins and things like that. But I'm always trying to figure out like what's something that stays within the realm of sandwich and deli that kind of like what am I missing type of thing.
Yeah.
um what advice would you give for someone wanting to start something?
Oh, I remember Scott's answer. Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I agree with.
Yeah.
My answer is similar, but just do it. But give yourself some grace. Don't. I always tell people this because I get asked. I've been asked many. I'm sure you've been asked before. How do you start your brand? What are some tips for starting up a brand? And I never forget this article I read on. I don't think the site's up anymore, but it's how to run a t-shirtcompany.com or something. It was this blog. Do you remember that?
I do. I do.
And he may still be up, so I apologize if I'm wrong there, but I remember this article that I read, and it said how to start a clothing brand, and the first line is, if you're thinking about starting a clothing line, don't do it, exclamation point, right? And I was like, oh, this guy's like spot on. Actually, don't do it. And that's not because we want the space and it's just
Yeah.
really hard. It's not for everybody. But my real advice is, if you're going to start something, um, don't expect that when your website launches, it doesn't matter how much time you put into it, forethought. Nobody knows you. Your website goes live, nobody knows that it's there. I remember opening my web shop and thinking, okay, it's online. And then it's like, where are the
Cricket.
sales? It's crickets, man. Well, nobody knows you're there. There's a billion websites.
Yep.
So you just have to have the patience to sustain. And it's very important to just have, I saw someone talking about this, a CEO the other day on Instagram, tenacity. You got to keep going and going and going if you really believe in it. And that's really the advice, is to just give it time and do your thing, but don't give up on it and don't get dissuaded, or if things don't explode, because that's not those are crazy stories, less than 1% stories where they just explode in the first year. I mean, just do it for yourself or don't, is kind of my main advice,
Yeah.
I think.
No, I think that that hits it because like I always go back and I think about, well, I mean, I always go back to like musicians, very similar in that aspect of like how they've been touring and doing music for so many years, and then all of a sudden they become famous, and everyone's like, oh my god, they're brand new, and they're like, well, they're new to you, but they're not new to the in the industry. They've been doing it for 10, 15 years. They've done all these LPs. That's why usually the first album's usually amazing because it's usually like their best of the best. And then I also could think back to like someone like Gary V, who usually like he was posting videos for like 10 years before it actually ever blew up.
I remember
You
that
know,
the wine
yeah, the wine
videos.
library. So like I think to myself like those things, even for like when I do my podcast or even my brand itself, I'm like, that's what I kind of tell myself. I'm like, I always say the same thing, like as you like your webpage is a speck. We're like a little speck
Yeah,
in the world of the internet, like of who's going to find you, and and knowing that, and then also knowing the fact that people, the multiples of like people need to see you at least 3 to 5 times before they'll actually do something. So there's all these different things I will say that I find very interesting, and you do a very good job on it, and I may ask if you have tips, because I will say that my feed now has tons, and I apologize because I know you're paying for it, but tons of Instagram Seventh Ink ads have popped up on my Instagram feed, because I've obviously, as been researching, I'm on my phone, and I'm just constantly seeing images, which I think is great. I'm like, well, he's doing something right, because I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing on this, but I'm like, he's definitely doing something right. So, congrats on that, by the way.
I think I don't know if it's working or not, right? Like, it's funny
Yeah,
because I was thinking about that this morning, because I'll be completely honest. I had, I think, maybe one sale yesterday, and that's coming off of my big release last week and everything, and it just kind of petered down to, all of a sudden it's Thursday, and it's like one, and I go, wow, damn it, right? Like,
yeah,
kind of need more than one sale a day right now, and
correct.
that's not what it was all week, but it just whoosh. So
Yeah,
then I woke up this morning going, are my ads not working? Are the ads, because the money, they'll take your money. You
no,
don't
they
know
don't
if those
care.
ads are
Yeah,
working. The fact that you've seen them all, maybe they all went to you, right? And that's not like
maybe.
the choice. But it's funny because, like, they say they're putting these ads out there. Sometimes I see the results. Sometimes I don't. I just see the
Yeah.
money come out of my account, and I go, "Oh, okay." Um, I think I lost the question though. What was the question?
No, no, no. I think that's kind of so. Like, is that something that you are? That's obviously part of it, where you're constantly putting in every month, going into a Facebook and Instagram ads.
Yeah, I wasn't doing it until so I was not really doing it until last year. So before that, I was doing that boost post thing.
Yeah.
Let me back up. Instagram is my main thing. I've
Yep.
always liked Instagram till I didn't, but now you're kind of at this point where that's the thing.
Yeah.
And then they started making you boost a post, and then I would boost it, $5 a day just to see what happened. It's like gambling though.
Yeah.
You could see you could see a bunch of likes come in, but they don't translate to sales. You could see nothing happen. You could see a bunch of sales and no likes, and then you don't even know if that came from that, right? It's like it's very, even
Yeah.
if you have the pixel going, it's like really hard to dial in exactly where this stuff's coming from. So I started tinkering with the boosted posts, but then I realized I don't know how well that works. So for me, it's a mix of newsletter list is a must. Gather people on your website. To get to, so you can send out actual release emails and sales and stuff like that. Instagram with the algorithm is tough. So yeah, boosting every now and then, but I haven't boosted in 6 months. But because of what I just said earlier about the ads in
Yeah.
yesterday's sales, this morning I was like, well, maybe I should throw $5 at 3 different posts, $5 a day for 5 days, and just see if they climb at all, if the sales, because I talked to Scott, I talked to a lot of other folks, and these ads they can be they can be amazing, and then they can just fall off, and there's no real reason that they tell us. It could be an algorithm shift. They might just stop showing them to certain groups. So really, you're just throwing all the money you have that you can afford. Don't go insane on it. You got to like kind of slowly work up, but you're kind of throwing it out there to see what happens and comes back
Yeah.
to you. It's
No, I
all a
get that.
gamble, really. This entire thing project, all of it's a gamble, right? Because we're putting money into into the designs, into the clothing, and then into the advertising and the marketing, and then you're like, there is so much that goes into this that people don't realize.
Yep.
But
No, I feel you. I totally I totally feel you when it comes to that. And that's kind of one of the tough ones. You're like, okay, well, what's the best way to do it? That's what another reason why I do enjoy doing the events, because the events, I feel like I get Instagram followers. It does usually lead to sales coming from it. I definitely think that that's one advice I would always give anybody is like, hey, if you can get into a market, even in the beginning, start small and then build yourself up to it, to do a larger market, but just kind of see where it kind of fits. And definitely be able to, because I think that to me is where I go, where I'm now at a mix where I get a good chunk of money from like wholesale, doing wholesale orders, doing some, it's like a mixture of wholesale, online, and then obviously then doing like when I do events. Because when I do events, you're like, I feel like that's like a big, almost like a wave of money coming in,
yeah,
because it's like every one short period of time you're investing a lot of time, but it's worth it when you're like when it comes down to it. So I
yeah,
totally agree.
it's a captive audience that shows. I will say
Yep.
one more thing too, because like, um, if you can get creative with your Instagram reels or your Instagram, like I found that reels, right, or videos is the thing, right? That is, everybody kind of knows that, but like it's hard to be creative with your videos when you don't have time for it. But if you can find time to make, it doesn't even have to be like a creative, well thought out reel, but if you can just make a short reel, like I did a reel about the coins and just showing like the details, that tells people so much more than just a photo in a block of text. And that's how people connect now. And that's free, right? Like I took 5 minutes, not even, I took 90 seconds because the reel is 90 seconds. I just
Yep.
didn't cut anything together. I didn't even put music in it because I don't want I don't want music in there. I
Yeah.
just want my voice and talk, and I show a product and I talk about it. And it's interesting to see at least the engagement goes up, and in some cases the sales go up as well. And regardless, you're connecting with your audience in a different way, and it's not a paid ad and it's not a shop now button, and it's more meaningful to them. So I would say to also make sure that you take time for that sort of stuff. That is really easy to lose sight of because, like, for me, again, time is an issue, and I have to kind of make myself do that sometimes. And I go, I
Yeah.
don't want to make this video right now, but if
Yep.
it's 90 seconds, just make something quick. It's interesting how that all works.
I love that you say that, because it's a good reminder for me and for everyone, because
Yeah,
and I'll flip it back as well. Have you ever, you did it with a coin? Have you done it with the shirts? Like each shirt, talk about each shirt and why, like what the thought process was and where and what you came up with. Like kind of like the quick 90-second like origin story of like where what inspired you for this design, and then kind of show it off.
I should do that, and I haven't. Right? I will
I'm
say,
with you. That's why I'm bringing it up, because
yeah,
I
no,
used to
that's a
do
good
that. I
point.
used to do BTS behind the sandwich
Oh,
shirt
I
is
love
what I used to call it, and I used to do like a whole thing,
that. That's
but it was like long reels. And I realizing now as you were talking, I was like, crap, I need to do that like 90 seconds. Just put on the shirt and be like, hey, this is why I came up with this shirt. I like saw this or I did this and this is what inspired it and here's what it is.
yeah,
Because that's like easy. That's an easy content for anyone to be able to create, to be able to talk about where they came up with it, what inspired you to do it.
yeah.
And then now if you have like a release of 5 items, that's 5 reels right there that you can now share, and it's an image people can see.
Exactly. That's a very good point. And what's interesting is with this Honda collection specifically, I do like kind of like a 3 or 4 bigger videos like leading up to the event. Like, hey, here's all the new items, and they tend to be like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes long because there's many items. Sometimes I'm going through. It's hard to tell if people stick around for that long, or if they scrub through, or if they just go, "Oh, I don't like that design anyway," or I don't have time right now. I'll check it later, and then they forget. Right? By making more dissectable pieces, you get into a better area. And 90 seconds is still a long time when you think about how quick people
Yeah.
do this swiping on their phone, right? Swipe, swipe, swipe. So I've started doing as many as I can whenever I think to do it, like a 15-second reel, because 10 to 5 to 10 seconds is probably that sweetest spot,
Yeah.
but even up to 15, and that seems very short. When you're talking, it is. But if you're just showing a product, if I'm just like taking a coin and spinning it like this and be like, check it out, and then that's it. People, whoa, 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 wait, what is that? And then they go and then maybe they'll do a little research, and then maybe they'll go down their own rabbit hole through your links and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so it's hard to tell what the best method is, but all of these things add up to free ways, right, to advertise and promote yourself and connect with your audience. Because again, it's we started this conversation with dopamine hits, right? Like, and money is not really like the main factor here, other than printing and making more. And
Yep.
so, connecting with the audience should be one of the most important things. And it's interesting to feel like I better boost this post and pay money. I better, do this and that and the other thing. And instead of just going, well, I probably should just make a video, or I should go live for a second, or I never go live,
Never go
but
live.
like I don't ever know if I should, or if it's what I would talk about, right?
Yeah.
And I've thought about like live drawing and stuff like that, but then I'm just like, who's gonna watch this? And maybe the answer is everybody, but maybe the answer is nobody, and I don't know if I
I
want to
mean, I
find
know a lot of people that do
right.
live drawings, or at
Yeah,
least do drawings, and they're able to show the video of it, like use
yeah,
that as their content,
yeah.
like film their screen as they're doing it.
I do some
I've
time
seen quite a bit of that.
lapses. Yeah, I do some
Yeah,
time lapses. But anyway, point
for sure.
is, right, the more that you can kind of guerrilla market yourself, right, and connect with people, I think is a win ultimately.
Well, I will say that our conversation has definitely led me to now realize and be like, well, all those boxes that I have, I'm just going to grab a shirt and I'm going to make a video of each one of the shirts that I have in a box, or that's folded up that I haven't sold, and share it. And then basically now create all these different quick little reels that I can now just disperse
That's a good way to do
and
it.
share for people. So definitely a good idea. Where can people, this is my last question, where can people follow you and shop, and also visit you if you're doing an event? Like, where can they see all that stuff? Give them all that stuff's going to be in the show notes, but I figure as we're listening, they're probably scrolling on their phones as well. They can give you a follow. Tell people how they can follow you and where they can shop.
Sure. Everything is Seventh.Ink, and that includes my website. It's actually Seventh.Ink.com, but I bought the .ink domain. So if you type Seventh.Ink in your phone, I don't know if this is good or bad. It's instead of going to a Google search, you go right to my website. So
Okay.
it's like, gotcha. No, I'm just kidding. So Seventh.Ink, the dot would be a period in between the two words, and they're all scrunched together. So that's, yeah, pretty much everything, I think. And if like, I think on YouTube there's no dots allowed, so it's Seventh.Ink, right? But Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, and all that stuff is available. Like if you go to my website or my Instagram, I have a link tree on my Instagram basically, so
Yep.
you can hit all that stuff through there. So,
No, that's perfect. Yeah,
so
and if you're a Halloween fan, definitely do some shopping. Get ready to do some shopping. If you like the spooky, I will I definitely will say it's badass stuff. And the best part about it is you could do spooky for Halloween too, because his just stuff is just awesome. I do love your Frosty. That's one of the ones I want, is the Frosty, just because I'm a Frosty fan.
oh, that's awesome.
So you've done some great stuff, man. I've loved your work for a while. I'm so glad we've been able to connect. And it's funny because Scott talks wonderful things about you guys being able to do, and I'm almost tempted to like get into try to figure out an event you guys are all doing, and then I can kind of crash one of your Airbnbs or a couch and try to sell in an event where you guys are all going to, because I think that would does I believe that is to be true. Like the camaraderie of those events, it does lessen and makes it a little bit better, even if like and then it just becomes bonus. Like if, hey, I sold like crazy and I get to interact with friends that I people that I become friends with. I think it's super super important. So I
Yeah.
definitely appreciate it.
You're totally welcome to join us, man. Just let us know.
Thanks. All right.
It does. They're expensive. Those
Yeah.
events are expensive to do. It's expensive to travel and stay places. I mean, that's why we do these Airbnbs. Plus, it's fun to talk shop and
Yeah.
either celebrate the highs and talk about the lows and all that stuff. And when you're in those settings with people, with like-minded individuals and stuff, you can kind of get to the real nitty-gritty. What's working, numbers, all that stuff. Just help each
Yeah.
other out, ideas, all that stuff. It's fantastic. So. Yep.
No, man, it's been fantastic. Been as super excited. I'm glad we got a chance to chat.
Yeah, me too.
That's our show for today. Thank you so much to Matt Johnson of Seventh.Ink for being on and having lunch during my lunch break. Definitely make sure to give him a follow. Check him out. You'll see all the stuff on my Instagram, on the Lunch with Biggie Instagram. You'll see him for a week, so you'll be able to follow him that way as well. But definitely give him a shout and give him a look. Do some shopping. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Do some shopping there. Sandwich selfies always encouraged. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.